when dust from an exploding star combines with an alien virus, all humans are turned into faceless automatons. All hope is lost. Or maybe not. One man and his family and some paint and some paintbrushes set off to save the world from something very bad. Apocalypse Schmapocalypse.
Are you my mommy?
No, kid, my name's Chris, and I like to make things.
Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how to make a steampunk gas mask. You could also make a not as steampunk gas mask too from this pattern. In fact, that's the amazing thing about this pattern is it's really adaptable to all different kinds of facial masky wear. This is kind of like Iron Man gas mask almost. That looks like a fish face mask. And yes, the pattern does include bonus instructions on how to make the Doctor Who Empty Child gas mask as well. Oh, I just had an idea. Hold on. Check this out. I just thought of this just now. How's that? And before we start, a little safety talk. 1, these are not real gas masks. Please do not wear them anywhere where you would need to be wearing a real gas mask. Not only would they not work, people would also probably look at you funny. Number 2, we all need air to stay alive. That's why there's holes in the bottom and a mesh covering the eyes. So please don't skip those out because not only are they good for breathing, it also helps keep you cool inside the mask. All right, enough said. Let's make a costume gas mask.
Find a scenic spot to measure your face and print out the corresponding pattern size. Measure the print guides to make sure it's been printed actual size and hasn't been scaled down by whatever program you're using to print it. You'll likely have to click the checkbox that says print actual size. Cut out your pattern pieces and put them in a pattern piece pile. Next comes tracing time. Don't forget to mark and label the alignment points, extending the line into the pattern piece so it doesn't get cut off when you cut out the pieces. Some of the pieces will need to be mirrored, so flip over your pattern and trace it again wrong side up. Just so I don't get mixed up later on, I like to mark the flipped over one with the letter A after its number. Make sure to mark the center of all the dots on piece 9 and piece 2, and the center lines on piece 2 and piece 8. Grab some 5 to 6 millimeter foam for the eye nuts, and some 10 to 12 millimeter foam for the pig snout looking piece. Again, it's super important that you mark the center lines here. And before you cut that hole out, you need to decide what kind of tubing you're going to use, like a vacuum cleaner hose, or a dishwasher hose, or a goose honking machine, which comes in super handy when you need to call some geese. Anyways, make sure whatever hole you cut fits the tubing you have. Alright, now you should be ready to start cutting stuff out. As always, cut directly on the line with a super sharp knife, and don't cut your fingers off. Save the center from piece number 4 because we'll use it later, and punch the 8mm holes in piece number 2, saving them as well. Now you can glue the two piece ones together, lining up the alignment points G, H, and I. I prefer to use hot glue for my gluing because there are less fumes to worry about, but you could also use contact cement. When I use hot glue, I glue a short section at a time, hold it together until it cools, and then move on to the next section. If you need more hot gluing tips, there'll be a link in the upper right hand corner right about now. Next, glue the two darts together, and then glue down piece 2, starting with the center line on the center seam and working your way back. As you glue down piece 2, allow it to follow the curve that's already been created when you glued piece 1 together. This way it will help maintain that curve instead of fighting against it, like it would if you were flattening everything down against the table while you were gluing it. Grab your 8mm punch again and repunch all the holes that you already punched when you were punching the holes in piece number 2. Now we'll glue our two piece 3s together, lining up points D, E, and F, and glue the seam at the eye hole, working your way from the center out. Finish that piece off by gluing the two tiny darts. Now you can line up points A, B, and C on piece 1 and piece 3. This works best if you glue a short section on both the outside and the inside edges, and then glue the rest in the middle, a small section at a time. This just helps to keep all the edges lined up nicely. Now glue the other side, which is a little trickier because you don't have a flat spot to press down on. Also, you might want to pay more attention than I did when you're marking the letters for the alignment points. I guess I must have been a bit distracted by something amazing while I was tracing those pattern pieces. Even though it's a bit tricky to get this seam nice and clean, it's kind of okay because it's going to get covered up anyways. Try your mask on to be sure that it fits your face. This one's a bit big for me because it's a size large and I have a tiny head. If you're happy with what you've got, grab piece 4 and jam it in the nose, making sure the center lines are lined up with the seams on your mask. Push it out so it protrudes a few millimeters from the thin foam, and glue it into place from the inside of the mask. And that is the basic gas mask base.
But that's not good enough for us, we need to fancy it up a bit. So let's add a nose grill and a cheek support system. Not fancy enough? You definitely need a forehead connection unit,
which is made by gluing piece 7 to piece 8 to piece 7, as shown here. Once you've got it all together, glue piece 7 beside piece 6, lining up the edge with the edge of piece 3. Then do the exact same thing on the other side with the other piece 7, piece 6, and piece 3. Glue down piece 8, and then finally the in-betweeny bits. Just don't glue the little flaps that go down towards the eye. We'll do that in a minute. First, we need to get the eye nut in place. Glue it down with one of the straight sides parallel to the center seam going down the front of the mask. Once that side is glued, you can then glue the opposite side and then the rest of the eye nut. Now you can glue the little flap down, trying to get it as close to the eye nut as possible. If it doesn't quite make it, you can always give it a little stretch. Line up the bottom end of piece 9 with the cheek support and glue it into place. Cover up the center seam with piece 11, trimming down the top edge if it's a little bit long. Piece 12 goes on the side of the cheek support, and piece 13 covers the seam between 7 and 8. Hopefully you saved your 8mm discs from all your hole punching at the beginning, because now it's time to not waste them. Glue them down over the marks you made on piece 9 and 2 on piece 13. Now grab your 6mm punch and punch a bunch more dots. Glue those around the eye nuts and along piece number 12. If you want, you can make your foam dots look like screw heads by making 2 vertical cuts with a very sharp knife and then connecting the cut at the bottom. Cut a strip of foam. The thickness will depend on what size pattern you're making, so just check your pattern for that measurement. Cut that strip into 6 18mm long pieces. Glue the strips around the nose, one between piece 2 and piece 6, and 2 more equally spaced between piece 6 and piece 11. Glue them down so they overhang the front edge. Then you can trim them to the correct length with a very sharp knife. Grab a matchstick and some 2-part epoxy, mix it up really well, and use the match head to drop dots of epoxy anywhere you want there to be little rivets. Now it's time to make the filter canister. I've included 2 different designs for the end of the canister for your making pleasure, and you can also choose to make your canister short or tall. You also get to choose whether you want it to be on a short tube that goes straight out, or a longer hangy-downy tube that hangs down. For this video, I'm going to make a short canister on a sticky-outy short tube, which is why I'm cutting piece 15 in half. Trace 2 piece 15s on some 2mm foam, and make marks on the edge where the dotted lines would go. Using the width of piece 16 as a guide, you can cut a long strip of 2mm foam. Glue your 2 piece 15s together end to end, cover the center seam with your strip of foam, lining up the top edge and leaving the bottom hanging over. You can then flip it over and trim off the extra. Repeat this process, leaving a space between each strip until you've covered the whole piece. Now you can glue the other ends together and cover it with your last strip. Cut out a piece 14 from 10mm foam and make sure your tubing fits snugly.
For the front design, I'm using pattern piece 17A, but if you want to use 17B, just check the instructions in the tutorial. Cut a 17A from 10mm foam and one from 2mm foam. The thinner piece gets glued behind the thicker one at a slight angle so it kind of looks like a vent that can open and close. Piece 14 gets pushed into one end and gets glued from the inside, and piece 17 gets glued in the other side. This one we can't glue from behind, but if we can get our glue gun tip right in that little gap between the edges, we can go all the way around and make a nice seam. And piece 18 finishes it off. If you wanted a mask with a dangly tube, all you need is an elbow and a bit longer tube, and you'd be good to go. However, I'm going with a short tube, so I'm cutting a piece 6 centimeters long. Jam one end into the hole in the canister, and plug the other end, because really, who knows what's been in that tube? I don't want to breathe that stuff. And we might as well finish off our canister with some more epoxy rivets. Sand down some 3/8 inch vinyl tubing, and cut 9 15mm long pieces. Glue them into the holes on the bottom of piece 2. Punch 3 12mm discs and stick them on the mask. Punch some holes with a pen or other sharp object and stick some wire in there. It's fine if it goes all the way through and sticks out on the inside of the mask, because we'll trim that off later. Put some super glue on the wires from both the inside and the outside, and then trim off the ends of the wires from the inside of the mask. And it should all look a little bit like this. Just don't glue the cylinder in yet, it's a lot easier to paint with them separate. Now you can give yourself a break and do something fun, like raking the yard.
Okay, I think that's as far as I'm gonna go. I'm getting a bit tired of editing, and you're probably getting a bit tired of watching me. So stay tuned for next week where I show you how I paint the gas mask, add the strap, and the eye mesh. Maybe I'll throw in some outtakes from this video as well, just for some fun. And as always, if you want to buy the pattern, there should be a link popping up maybe here-ish. If you don't want to buy the pattern, it'd be super helpful if you clicked that link there, because that makes YouTube think that you really like my videos, and then they'll recommend it to other people. And wouldn't that be fun? Thanks for watching. Have a super amazing day. See ya.